What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online. As usual, today I'm going to do something a little different. I want to talk about all the people that are losing money, specifically on Lofty. I know I spent a lot of time telling you, I've showed you a lot of my wins recently. Some really talk a lot about what the opportunities are, but I wanted to make sure one, I don't want to oversell the opportunity because it does take a lot of work to find the good deals. But I also want to just really share what the risk is for people that are using this platform. And actually, this is Lofty's platform, right? This one that I have up is loftyassist.com. This was created by another investor on Lofty. He's also a member of our Discord. Before I forget, please like and subscribe. Also, in the description to this video, there's a link to a Discord channel that is just a generic channel for discussing fractional real estate investing, whether it's on Lofty, Mogul, Ground Floor, Sol's Lot, Collab, Arrived, any of those places. There's a whole bunch of us now that talk pretty regularly about quite a few different topics. So please feel free to join that. I also have links to all of the places where I'm currently invested in fractional real estate online. Do your own due diligence on those sites and on any of the properties that you see on there. But so I'm going to show you on Lofty specifically, why I'm so adamant about really digging into the property. So I was looking on Lofty Assist, and he's got a whole bunch of different groups of data. And one thing that I couldn't find, and I've asked him to add it, hopefully he will, is the average token price. He's got average yield, which I think is very interesting. A whole bunch of average rent, all that stuff. But one of the things, what I did is I went and pulled every single token price on this site, and I did this just while I was sitting here, 4 o'clock on April 23rd, right? So this is going to be different, and this data is only good for right now. I also, so everything that was on here, and I dug up all the ones that are listed for sale in the real world that still have prices. If there wasn't a market price because there was no liquidity pool, I used whatever the last trade was for limit orders as the price. I think that's pretty fair. Some of them ended up being higher than I would have expected. Some of them were lower. Um, but I did that, so I just put that all in my Excel sheet here, and then just wanted to give you a couple little data points, which is why I think you need to be really careful, right? So it's a total of 166 properties that I pulled prices for. The average token price for those is $36.29. If you're an avid Lofty user, you know that par value, or the value that tokens are originally brought to the site are is the price that it's originally brought to the site is $50 per token, right? And so that means on average, and that's not even including the fees that you pay on top of it, right? And so that means on average, if you bought tokens at $50, you've lost about 27% of your property value. Um, which is a huge, a huge capital loss. And is one of the main reasons that I'm such a stickler for doing really, really strong due diligence on any of the properties that are originally brought to the platform, and also why I'm a big proponent of searching for the discounted tokens and buying those, right? Because um, if on average we're going to lose 25% value over time, uh, you know, it's important to one, identify the ones that won't, but also to if you can buy below that price, it gives you a much better chance of actually making some money. So a couple of things. One, there are a lot of what Lofty calls their legacy properties in this sample, meaning the legacy properties are ones that they're not using a co-ownership model where the person that brought it to the site still stays on board. Um, they think that's gonna solve a lot of these problems. I'm not sure that I completely agree. I mean, there's quite so there's only 25 of the 166 properties, only 25 are currently above the $50 mark. There are more than 25 co-ownership properties, and I think significantly more. You know what? I'm going to pause it and count. Sorry about that. I just wanted to pause because um, I thought it would take me a long time to figure out, but I forgot. Lofty Assist lets you sort by, one of the things that you can filter by is it co-owned? Is it a co-owned property? Yes. So, okay, there are 47 co-ownership properties. Well, currently there are only 25 that are selling for above $50 and 12 that are at $50. So that's 37. So there's at least 10 that have dropped below that $50 mark already. And the co-ownership model is relatively new. I actually think it's worse than that because there are some, I believe there's a couple legacy properties that are still above, let's see if we can get up here, that are still above that $50 mark. Not a lot, but I believe there are a couple of them. So let's see. Let's see if we can find some that I know of. No. So okay, so here's one I'm fairly certain that this one is. Um, and this one, right? So we got two. And I don't know all of these, so I could be missing some as well. I think that's it though. So I think it's two more, meaning that there are two more that co-ownership ones that have already dropped below 50. Um, I guess, at some point in time, I'll probably just pull the numbers just for co-ownership properties. I do think it solves some of the problem, but we've already seen, some of them are, like I said, some of them are already dropping down. I own one that's I own a couple that have had significant losses. Some of them I bought afterwards. Some I bought close to 50, but not quite. They were some of the earlier purchases that I had on the site. And so, I think it's just a really good example of why you have to be so careful because, um, I don't think that solves it. And I think, some of the co-owners are fantastic. And I think if you pick the right ones and they're, because they're spending time managing that DAO, running the property, um, I think if you pick the right ones, you can do very well. And you can see there are some that are selling for significantly above $50. Although some of these um, might have been some $50 tokens, but I think they actually sold out of these ones at this higher price. So that's not even really the same thing. It kind of is. It kind of isn't. Um, let's see. Yeah, so some of these, and I own a little bit of this one. The guy Alec who manages these two, I think, does a great job. I think this is Oreo that has this one. I don't have this one, but I have one of his others. Earl's got this. So like some of the you can just tell a lot of the ones that are showing up near the top, they're run by someone who's doing a good job at the moment. And so that's why it's really, one of the reasons I'm talking about this today is because if you were on Lofty's Discord, you probably saw, 100 messages about different votes going out because there's a whole bunch of people changing PMs at the moment. I know that almost all the properties that are managed by Y Home or Yome that I currently own, all of them except for one are going to go to a new manager. I think my two biggest holdings already have that vote went through, and so I was excited about that. But the other ones that I have, I think only one is going to end up stuck with them. And so, uh, but it doesn't mean that the new manager is going to do an amazing job, right? Like something could happen. Uh, I'm actually pretty confident in the ones that took over properties that I have. There are a lot of different votes for properties to go to different people. And I honestly don't believe a lot of people are doing the most due diligence on those votes. There's like, we know it's not good now, let's just move it over. Um, and so it's again just an example of if all you're doing is sort of, if you're not really digging into the situation with each property, uh, I think this average loss is, it's very likely that you'll have a result like this, right? Like that you're just not going to um, make money on here and possibly lose money. There are things, seeing the average yield. I know most of the properties that are coming to the platform, lately at least, they come to the platform with a high teens or a 20% yield, um, for the most part, those yields don't last, right? So it's really important to look at the fundamentals to see, is this property able to continue to pay the yield? And the biggest reason that you see some prices drop is um, when that yield goes away. A lot of the investors that are on the site just for the yield, well, they dump those tokens. So I don't want to be too negative, right? But I think this is a good example of why there's a problem. But it's also why I really love the strategy of buying these discounted tokens and then pushing for a sale of the property in the real world. Because on average, I believe most of the properties are worth much closer to the $50 token price if you sell the property. Now, there's going to be transaction costs, and a lot of them paid a bit of an inflated price, and some of them it's obvious, like some of the new ones that come to the market, they just come right out and tell you you're paying 5% over appraisal. A lot of the older ones, I think it was really much more that they I don't even know. I don't know how they got some of them to appraise at the prices that they did, and it looked like some of them maybe didn't actually have appraisal. So I don't know. I haven't been on the site since the very beginning, so there's a lot that went on that I'm not aware of. But um, for the most part, I haven't seen any. There's been very few real world sales that end up being less than a high $30 token price, which means on average, you could buy, more than half of the tokens on this platform, move to sell that property in the real world and actually make a profit. And some of them, maybe once you include Lofty's fees and the OR contribution and closing costs on the sale, maybe you're actually going to lose money. But especially when you get down to many of these that are extremely cheap, that's why I still think there's opportunity on here. Although a lot of these maybe have some additional debt that you have to dig into and figure out. But it is, and I'm way too much of an optimist, right? So I'm sorry. I start to talk about what the opportunity is, but I really just wanted to point out, like, this is reality, right? Like most people, or at least people that own, on average, if you just bought tokens on this site, you've lost money. And now, I think that maybe if you bought, new releases in the last 6 months, that's probably not true, right? You probably made money. But one of the things too is, I think, given time, even some of the ones that are above 50 today, uh, I mean, there's definitely at least a couple, especially some of the short-term rentals that I think will end up being, at some point dumped for significantly below that $50 price. Now, again, maybe that's just an opportunity, but it's definitely a risk if you're looking for if you're looking for a stable asset. uh, on average, your tokens are losing 20% or 27% of their value. That's problematic, right? And on average, the yields are not high enough to overcome that. So I don't know. I just think this is interesting information to look at. I was looking at, how many are, that's the average, but 78% are below the initial price, right? Only 15% are above and 7 are at. Um, it is just pretty mind blowing to me. Uh, it means, yeah, average loss 27%. So it really just means that you just have to be careful. I guess that's, and I'm sure I sound like a broken record to a lot of you. I'm constantly saying do your own due diligence, but it is. I mean, it's a relatively new platform. It's really inefficient in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to the people that are investing on it, right? Like you don't have an efficient marketplace, right? You have um sort of, I don't know. So it's a very strange group of investors, right? Where many of them are just not doing any due diligence at all, or they're saying, "Hey, I like the way this looks, and look at that yield; it's fantastic." I think more and more people are learning that you have to dig into the properties, and really look at the fundamental, does this property make money? Not just is there a yield in this token this month, right? And I know that anybody that comes to this world from real estate investing, which is most of my friends, that seems really obvious. But I think what they've done is attracted a lot of crypto investors to this site, and I think there's people that are putting their meme coin profits into this, or that are used to, different types, just a much different. Like, as for example, if you're looking at any specific coin, right? If you're a crypto investor, there's not a ton of due diligence that you can do to like prove a value in the same way that you can, for if I'm looking at this specific property, I can look at what this property is worth, and that informs me as to the value that the token should be, right? Anyway, that's really it. Basically just be careful, understand that most people are losing money on here, uh, but I still believe there's fantastic opportunities for people who are willing to dig them up. And I am still pretty hopeful too that they will work some of the kinks out and have a better long-term average. I'd love to see at some point they get to a point where your average price is above the original offer price. Um, I think if they can't get to that, I think if that doesn't happen, the survivability of the platform would is really comes into question, right? Like, if you can't, if on average your investors are losing money, you're only going to attract new investors for so long. You'll eventually churn through everybody. Um, but I think if the investors themselves become more discerning, and it becomes harder to sell out some of the kind of trash properties. I mean, there's still a lot of people that get duped. There's properties that have come to the platform and sold a decent amount, and I think that you're just going to lose money based on my analysis of looking at it, and obviously people are looking at it how they are, and it certainly doesn't mean I'm going to be right about all of them, right? I mean, there's ones like I passed up this South Solano Drive one, even though I liked it a lot, but it was already, the price was already higher than I wanted it to be. And I know he's planning on paying off that debt, so then that's going to crush the yield eventually. So I think that I wasn't thinking short term enough yet. That's a weird thing to say, right? Back when I was first looking at this one and realizing that, I think if that came to the platform today, I think it would be obvious to me that I could buy it at 50 or 55 and the price would go way up because it was providing a really good yield. And understanding that I'd need to get out of it before that debt get paid off, the yield plummeted and people just sold the tokens at, this will be an interesting one to see, right? If that debt does end up getting paid off, and so because of that, we lose the benefit of the leverage, um, which is the stated goal of the co-owner on that one is to pay off that debt. It'll be really interesting to see because it's a relatively it's a multifamily property. It has a decent cap rate, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 7.43% cap rate, and I know it's actually probably lower than this because of the way Lofty doesn't account for a lot of stuff in their cap rates. But I don't know. Now I've really just kind of rambled about it, but I think that so I think I'm just going to stop. Sorry about that. It is late at night for me, early in the morning for a lot of you. Um, yeah, just wanted to share that data. And that's it. So until next time. And oh, sorry, the video I posted yesterday, somehow I stopped recording like 2 or 3 minutes before I put it out. I don't have that recording anywhere, and I don't even know how to go like back and add to one that I've already uploaded. So I apologize for that. If you've watched to this point, I really appreciate it. Sorry that sometimes I end up just rambling towards the end. I just have a hard time ending these, and clearly I'm still am. So until next time. I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.